They all stood there, arms crossed, smirking as I handed over $900 in crumpled bills to the man selling the rusted, dented old car sitting at the edge of his yard. My sister giggled under her breath, whispering to my cousin, "She's such a fool. Who buys junk like that?" But I pretended not to hear. The summer air was thick with heat and judgment, and as I signed the transfer papers with my trembling hand, my dad sighed loudly. "What a waste of money," he muttered. I didn't reply. I just stared at the car, paint chipped, tires bald, dust covering every inch, and felt something shift in my chest, because deep down, I knew what they didn't. This wasn't just a car to me, it was a possibility. When the tow truck finally arrived, the driver hopped down and tilted his cap back, staring at the battered car with narrowed eyes. My dad was already laughing with my uncle near the porch, sipping iced tea like it was a show just for them. The driver circled the car once, twice, and then he paused, bending down to peek beneath the chassis. I watched silently, clutching the bill of sale against my chest, ignoring the sweat running down my back. For a moment, there was only the sound of cicadas and my family's muffled laughter floating through the heat. The driver straightened up slowly, turned to me with a strange intensity in his gaze, and said, "Ma'am, do you even know what this is?" The mocking whispers behind me fell silent, replaced by a sudden stillness. I swallowed hard, my heart thundering. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was revealing a secret that could change everything. He wiped the dust off the faded emblem on the hood with the side of his hand, revealing a symbol I hadn't even noticed before. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, dark with disbelief. This isn't just any junk car," he whispered, shaking his head slowly. My family moved closer now, curiosity breaking their smug expressions. "This is a 1967 Shelby GT500, he continued, voice trembling with restrained excitement. I blinked, confused, until he added, "It's one of the most sought-after classic muscle cars ever made. Even in this condition, it could be worth tens of thousands, maybe more if it's restored." My breath caught in my throat as my sister's jaw fell open. My dad stepped forward, his smirk gone, replaced with an eager greed I recognized too well. The driver shook his head again and let out a low whistle. Whoever sold this to you had no idea what they let go. At that moment, under the glaring sun and stunned silence, I felt a small, unstoppable smile spread across my face. The tow truck driver continued inspecting every inch of the car, his calloused fingers brushing lightly over the metal as if touching a relic. Behind me, I could hear my sister whispering to my cousin, but this time there was no laughter in her voice, only disbelief and envy dripping from each syllable. "How did she know? She doesn't know anything about cars," she hissed. The driver glanced back at them and then to me, almost protectively. "Ma'am, this car, it's rare. Only a few thousand were ever made. Even wrecked like this, collectors would pay a fortune just for the chassis and engine block alone." I felt a sudden tightness in my chest, not fear, but the overwhelming force of a quiet victory finally breaking through. My dad tried to step in, clearing his throat with forced authority. "We'll take care of it. We'll help you sell it properly," he said, his tone dripping with fake generosity. But I shook my head slowly, never taking my eyes off the car. Because for the first time in my life, I realized this wasn't about them anymore. This was about me, my choices, my instincts, and no one was going to take that away. I ran my hand across the chipped hood, feeling the rough edges beneath my fingertips. All those years of being told I was impulsive, that I never thought things through, that I wasted money on dreams instead to reality. They replayed in my mind like a cruel chorus. But right now, staring at the Shelby GT500 under the blazing sun, I felt every one of those judgments burn away. My dad stepped closer, his eyes darting between me and the tow truck driver, his voice tightening with urgency. "Listen," he said, forcing a smile. "Let me talk to some people I know. I can get you a good price for it. We don't want you getting scammed, sweetheart." My sister nodded eagerly beside him, like a trained parrot, but the driver spoke up before I could answer. "Sir, with all due respect, she doesn't need anyone. Whoever bought this knew exactly what they were doing. I turned to him, gratitude flickering in my eyes, and for the first time, I spoke with a calm confidence they had never heard from me before. "Thank you," I said softly. "I'll handle it myself." As the tow truck lifted the car onto its platform, the metal creaked and groaned, echoing like a war drum through the silent yard. My uncle stepped out from behind my dad, wiping his hands on his jeans, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're telling me this rust bucket is worth something," he scoffed, half laughing, half choking on his own pride. The driver ignored him, securing the chains with precise, respectful care. I stood there, feeling the heat rising from the pavement, thinking about all the jobs I'd worked to save that $900, waitressing late nights, cleaning houses on weekends, selling my handmade crafts online. Every dollar had felt heavy back then, like a reminder that I wasn't good enough to earn more. But now, watching my family's disbelief morph into uncomfortable silence, I realized that those heavy dollars were actually building something solid. They thought I was buying junk, but I was investing in possibility, in my intuition, in my own rebirth. For the first time, their laughter felt like nothing more than distant static against my resolve. As the tow truck pulled away, taking the Shelby GT500 towards the mechanic I had researched secretly for weeks, I could feel their eyes burning into my back. My dad called out one last time, his voice desperate under the sun. "You're making a mistake. Let us help." But I didn't turn around. Instead, I walked calmly to my small, beaten-up sedan parked by the curb, opened the door, and sat down with deliberate grace. My hands trembled slightly against the steering wheel, but inside, I felt an unshakable calm blooming in my chest. While I drove behind the truck, dust swirling around us like a veil, I remembered every dinner where they told me I was a failure, every birthday where my gifts were mocked, every time my ideas were dismissed with a laugh. Today, their laughter had turned to silence, and silence, to me, felt like power. Because I wasn't screaming my worth. I was showing it, quietly, unstoppably. And I promised myself that no matter what happened with this car, I would never again ask their permission to believe in myself. When we arrived at the mechanic's shop, a small building lined with faded muscle car posters and the scent of grease and gasoline thick in the summer air, the driver lowered the Shelby with careful reverence. The mechanic, a middle-aged man with oil-stained hands and intelligent eyes, stepped out wiping his palms on a rag. For a long moment, he just stared at the car in stunned silence. Then, with deliberate slowness, he walked around it, inspecting the undercarriage, the engine plate, the chassis markings. Finally, he looked at me with a mix of awe and curiosity. "Do you know what you've got here?" he asked quietly. I nodded, feeling tears sting the corners of my eyes, not out of fear or sadness this time, but from the sheer force of my quiet victory. "Yeah," I whispered. "I think I do." He gave a small, knowing smile. "Then you're about to change your life." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the scent of old metal, engine oil, and possibility filling my lungs. For the first time ever, I felt unstoppable. The mechanic invited me into his small office lined with certificates, old photographs of restored cars, and a single fan spinning lazily in the heat. He sat across from me, leaning back in his squeaky chair, studying my face with curiosity. "Most people don't recognize value when it's covered in rust and dust," he said softly, tapping his pen against a notepad. "But you did. That says a lot about you." I looked down at my hands, calloused from work, nails short and bare, and felt a sudden wave of pride rush through me. We spent over an hour talking about restoration options, market values, auction strategies, and rare parts. Every word felt like building a bridge between who I had been, the silent, underestimated girl, and who I was becoming, a woman with vision, strategy, and quiet power. Before I left, he shook my hand firmly and said, "You let me know when you're ready to start. This will take time, but when it's done, you'll be sitting on something worth 6 figures." I smiled, feeling tears burn my eyes again. Not from the money, but from finally feeling seen. Driving home that afternoon, the sky was a deep, cloudless blue, and for the first time in years, I noticed how beautiful it was. Every red light felt like a moment to breathe, to absorb what had just happened. I thought about my family sitting around the dinner table that night, probably laughing nervously, trying to convince themselves it was just luck, that I'd somehow stumbled into this by accident. But I knew better. I thought back to all those times I was told I was naive, reckless, that I didn't understand how the real world worked. The irony burned sweet on my tongue, because the real world, their world, was small, built on control and fear of the unknown. Mine was built on silent risks, intuition, and the courage to see possibility in broken things. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a long moment, gripping the wheel, breathing deeply. I didn't feel like the same woman who woke up that morning. For the first time, I felt like someone who couldn't be broken by their laughter anymore. That evening, my sister called me. Her voice was sickly sweet, dripping with false concern. "Hey, so, Dad was wondering if you needed help with that car thing. We could talk to some people, get it sold faster, wouldn't want you getting scammed." I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me like rain on a sealed window. Calm. Untouched. "Thanks," I replied softly, "but I've got it handled." There was a pause, a silence so thick I could almost hear her grinding her teeth on the other end. "Well, okay then," she snapped, hanging up abruptly. I put down my phone and stared at the ceiling, feeling a quiet, fierce joy bloom in my chest. Their help was never help. It was control, disguised as kindness, manipulation, disguised as family duty. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange sense of peace humming beneath my ribs. For the first time in my life, I didn't just believe in possibility. I believed in myself. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, unable to sleep with the excitement coursing through my veins. I made coffee in silence, the rich, bitter aroma filling my small kitchen, grounding me in this new reality I was building with my own two hands. I sat by the window, watching the sky slowly bleed from black to purple to gold. My phone buzzed again with messages from my dad, my uncle, even cousins I hadn't spoken to in months. "Heard about the car. Let us help you sell it properly. Don't make any decisions without family. Remember, you owe your parents everything." Each message was another link in the chain they had wrapped around me my whole life. But as the sun rose, I felt each link disintegrate into nothing. I sipped my coffee slowly, feeling warmth bloom through me, because now I owed them nothing. My life was finally mine to steer, to restore, to transform, just like that car, just like the broken, powerful, unstoppable engine waiting to roar back to life. Days turned into weeks as the mechanic began the delicate work of restoration. Every evening after my shift, I would drive to his shop, still wearing my cafe uniform, and stand by the car, watching its transformation with silent awe. The rust was sanded away to reveal the bold curves of its original design. The engine, once choked with grime and age, began to gleam under the fluorescent lights. One evening, as the mechanic tightened bolts along the hood, he glanced at me and said, "Most people would have flipped this for quick cash. You're different. You see things through." I felt my throat tighten with emotion because no one had ever said that to me. I thought about all the dreams I'd abandoned because they called me unrealistic, all the plans I'd hidden because they mocked them. This car, piece by piece, was becoming proof that what I saw in myself wasn't foolishness. It was vision, and I knew when it roared back to life, it wouldn't just be the car reborn, it would be me. Finally, the day came when the mechanic called me early in the morning. His voice carried a quiet excitement. "She's ready," he said simply. I drove over with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. As I stepped into the shop, there it was, the Shelby GT 500, glowing under the soft lights like a resurrected legend. The deep, midnight blue paint shimmered with every subtle curve, the chrome details reflecting my stunned expression. The mechanic tossed me the keys with a small smile. "Start her up," he said. My hands trembled as I slid into the leather seat, gripping the wheel that once felt broken and forgotten. I turned the key, and the engine roared to life with a thunderous, perfect growl that vibrated through my bones and sent chills across my skin. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "Welcome back." In that moment, I felt everything shift inside me. The girl they laughed at was gone. What remained was a woman reborn in quiet, unstoppable power. A week later, I put the car up for auction. The day of the event, I wore my simplest dress and stood quietly at the back of the room as collectors and dealers crowded around the stage, eyes wide with hunger and admiration. The bids climbed higher and higher, numbers I never dreamed would be attached to anything I owned, let alone something they all called junk. When the final bid landed just over $300,000, the room erupted in applause, but I remained still, a small smile playing at my lips. That evening, as I drove home in my old sedan, the sunset blazing gold across the horizon, my phone buzzed again with messages from my family. Congratulations mixed with forced jokes about always knowing I'd make it, but I didn't reply. I just kept driving in silence, feeling the quiet hum of freedom deep in my chest, because I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built something with my own hands, my own instincts, my own faith, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly, undeniably, unstoppable. Thank you for watching until the end. If you've ever lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the loudest impact is made in silence.